Notre Dame versus Penn State in the Orange Bowl for spot in the national title game is just a couple of days away. And to get a Penn State perspective on this matchup, we got Greg Pickle over from Blue White Illustrated, our sister site, covering Penn State at On 3. So, Greg, as we always do when we bring in opposing writers for this video, I'm going to ask you, what's the vibe with Penn State going into this game, man? The fans, media, the team can really take this many different ways. But what are the vibes just a few days out from this big game?
Yeah, Mike, it's good to be with you. I think the thing I understood listening to many Penn State people talk over the weekend is that they're ready to go. And, I went back and looked at James Franklin's Big Ten Media Day comments from back in July. And he had mentioned then that they were preparing for a potentially 17-game season, which is where they're at right now in terms of obviously they could play a 17th game if they beat Notre Dame. If not, they're still going to play 16. But the entire message, the entire thought process throughout the course of 2024 and now into early 2025 was to put themselves in a position from a physical perspective, from an emotional perspective, mental perspective, so on and so forth, to be ready to go when Penn State is able to, play this game in an Orange Bowl setting against Notre Dame, a great opponent, and make sure they would still be ready for everything that they needed to do. So I think that everything coming out of them is confidence, but there's some question marks. Is Adbul Carter going to play? If he does play, will he be 100%? The All-American left the Fiesta Bowl against Boise State with a upper body injury, looked to be a left arm injury. Did not return, tried to, came back for a play, did not. So there's a lot of concern within the Penn State fan base about that. But otherwise, they seem to be as healthy as they could be. There's been some long-term injuries. I know not as many as what Notre Dame has suffered, but certainly there's some guys that have not been with this team either for a long time. In the case of KJ Winston, who was a preseason All-American safety, or Alonzo Ford, a backup oft-used defensive tackle. So there's some guys who are banged up for sure, and no one's 100% at this point, as you well know. Nobody from Notre Dame is either. But I think that all told, they're confident heading down there, and I'm sure Notre Dame is too. And that's the reason why so many people, from what I've been able to gather, think this is going to be such a fantastic college football playoff semifinal.
Oh, it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. I'll be there, Greg. I know you'll be there as well. Okay, so the Carter thing is super interesting. I know what James Franklin said about it in his press conference over the weekend, which was a whole lot of nothing. It was basically like, if he can play, he's going to play. It's like, all right, cool. So what do you expect? Do you think he'll play? And if he does, like 70% Abdul Carter, 60%, like what do you think?
Yeah, so after watching him at the Fiesta Bowl and whatever they were trying to do to get him to come back, clearly it was not enough to put him back on the field at Glendale or State Farm Stadium in Glendale. So I expect him to try and play. I don't have any doubts that he will be on the field for Penn State's first series. I have doubts about how long that lasts in terms of the whole game. And certainly, I think it's important to remember that Denai Dennis Sutton, the other Penn State starting defensive end who was hurt earlier this year when he had a leg injury. He went only on certain pass rushing downs until he was back and ready to go. Obviously, what they did in November is not necessarily indicative of what they're going to do with potentially 2 games to go. But it would not shock me if the health situation was such that he was only able to play pass rushing downs. But at the same time, he has been very active on social media, giving as many ambiguous clues as possible, using movie characters and things like that suggest he's going to play. So I don't think there's any doubt, Mike, that he's going to give it a go. And I think after that first series, we're going to have a lot better feel for where he's at, how much he's going to play, so on and so forth. But I do question, at least for now, heading into the game a couple days before it, whether or not he's going to be able to play his regular amount of snaps. I have no doubt he'll want to and that he's going to try to, but whether he will, time will tell.
Okay, looking at the Penn State offense, we know Drew Alar, maybe not super mobile, but great arm, can make a lot of throws, got some good moxie to him. You know about the tight end, Tyler Warren, big, Mackey winner, got it. Running backs, they got 2 great backs in Allen and Singleton. Notre Dame fans remember Singleton from the wild recruiting saga. Notre Dame's got 2 really good running backs. Tell me, and I know Penn State's got a pretty good offensive line from what I understand, but I want to know what your thoughts on this Penn State offense, specifically the receivers. Like, because Notre Dame's going to run a lot of cover one, they're going to blitz a ton, they're going to leave the corners on an island. Like, can this Penn State passing offense, can it pose a real threat to Notre Dame? I'm just curious for your thoughts on this offense.
Yeah, I think that obviously the passing offense goes through Tyler Warren. There's no doubt about that. He is, as you mentioned, the Mackey Award winner, one of the best offensive players in college football. Passing offense will go through him. But if Penn State's going to win this game, it will need some of its receivers to step up, whether that's Trey Wallace, whether that is Omari Evans, whether that's Liam Clifford or Julian Fleming, who, of course, came to Penn State this year from Ohio State. It's going to need some of those guys to step up. And the big thing I'm watching for here, there's two of them. Number one is Boise State really did a nice job for a large chunk of the Fiesta Bowl when it came to sending blitzes at Penn State that either they sent more guys than Penn State could block, or they sent them in ways that Penn State did not appear to be expecting, and were able to get pressure because of that. So we all know that Notre Dame, of course, will try and do something similar. Al Golden, I'm sure, and his staff have spent the last however many days it's been. Every day is kind of the same at this point, so I don't even want to try and give a benchmark of days, but week, whatever it may be, 5 days, 4 days, whatever, trying to figure out why Boise State was successful with its pass rush schemes and how Notre Dame can try and replicate that. So I think that's number one. And then number two, Penn State runs a lot of outside zone. That's how they like to operate their run game. Notre Dame, statistically, if you look at the advanced analytics, I guess, been very good against that. Maybe not as good against inside zone. And Penn State does not run a ton of that. So does Andy Kotelnicki, the Penn State offensive coordinator, call an audible, so to speak, and go more to that part of his playbook. We'll have to wait and see. But I do think that there's no doubt that Penn State will try, and I'm assuming much like Notre Dame will, try to establish the run early and make that a big part of the game, which is why I think the fact that I know we're going to get to this in a second, but the fact that the total is approaching 50 to me just seems crazy because I don't see a lot of points in this game. I see a lot of time sucking possessions in this game, and I think both teams would be okay with that if that ended up being the case.
Agree. I've got the game in the teens. We'll talk about that in a bit. The defense. What do we need to know about the Nittany Lions on defense?
Yeah, so again, the conversation starts with Adbul Carter. How much can he play? If he is not able to play, Amin Vanover, a backup Penn State defensive end, had a very good Fiesta Bowl. Or probably is, I think it's probably safe to say, his best game as a Nittany Lion. So is he able to replicate that against Notre Dame if he is called on more than he has been for the rest of the season? That's number one. And then number two, I think Penn State has at times had trouble with tempo, and they have at times had trouble with the first couple drives of games, specifically the first drive of games, getting settled in, whether it's communication, alignment, things like that. So could Notre Dame, regardless of whether it wins the toss, but especially if it wins the toss, set a tone early and a presence early and jump on Penn State with a lead and then try and play from ahead? I think that's something it'll be something to watch for certain. And so, but all told, I mean, it's a very good Penn State defense. James Franklin's, no matter who his defensive coordinator has been since he's been at Penn State, has had really good defenses. This is another one with Tom Allen in his first year as a defensive coordinator. For the most part, it's healthy. I mean, as we note, Carter is a huge impact on this game, how much he plays, whether he plays, so on and so forth. But for the most part, they're healthy otherwise. And so you're going to get the unit that shows up on paper. And much like Notre Dame, they do a lot of things very sound. They are very sound for the most part from an assignment perspective, from a do your job perspective. And so the key here will be, can Carter play? And if he does, how will he impact the pass rush portion of the Notre Dame offense? And that'll be really the key, because when he went out, they did have trouble, Mike, with stopping or getting pressure at times against Boise State. And they were able to overcome that against the Broncos. It will be harder to do against the Fighting Irish.
I'm the Notre Dame guy. I've got Notre Dame winning. You're a Penn State reporter. I'm guessing you've got Penn State winning. That if it's a close game, you pick who you cover. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. I'm guessing you're going with the Nittany Lions. Do you have a score prediction you can share at this point? Maybe that's for your website. But how do you see this game turning out?
Yeah, I wish. I was talking to our buddy Ryan Snyder, who covers recruiting for Blue White Illustrated. He puts our predictions together every week, and I was hoping he would delay a day till we had to post these things, because honestly, I don't know. I mean, this is the first time. What I wrote that'll be posted over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com later this week is that this is the first time this year where I really feel like I have no clue. I mean, when you look at what Penn State's defense is, how Penn State's defense is different when Adbul Carter is not on the field. And you look at how Notre Dame's offense can be different if Jeremiah Love's not on the field.
Sure.
It makes it really hard to pick, Mike. It
Yeah.
does. I mean, if those guys are not 100%, well, I think we can probably assume they won't be 100%, but
Far
how
from
much
100%, right?
Right. So how much they can play, if one of those guys can play 75% of his regular snaps and one of them can play 40% of the regular snaps, it changes things drastically. So I picked at Penn State 24-20. I don't have a lot of conviction in that pick. I looked at, you look at SP Plus, you look at Sportsline, you look at Austin Mock's model with The Athletic. Like, they all have it within 3 or 4 points, like the data side of things. And I think they're right. I would be shocked if either team gets blown out in this game. So it'll come down to what it always does: third down efficiency, turnovers, and penalties. And whoever can execute in those 3 areas the best is going to find themselves in the college football playoff national title game. And I think, Mike, that what will surprise everyone is that if this is not a good game, because it has instant classic written all over it.
Oh, completely agree, Greg. You got the juices flowing a little bit. I got Notre Dame 20-17 for what it's worth. Folks, make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video, subscribe to the channel, and as always, we will catch you next time.